Good morning, English learners. So today we are here with another editorial. So before starting the editorial, let's see what is the thought of the day today. Focus on where you want to go, not what you fear. So at times, it does happen that we really want to achieve big things in our life. But what really stops us, I personally believe it's not the things around us, but we ourselves, because we fear from things. We feel like I cannot do this because I'm not good at it. So these are the things that acts as hindrance in a way. So what can really be done is we should channelize our energy towards our goals rather than on the negative outcomes of life, because they can change if we change our approach. So with this beautiful thought, let's start the editorial now. So today's editorial is about the nasal vaccine that has been approved, and the author or the editor is trying to explain us what all it is about. So let's start the editorial without any further ado. Nose dose on nasal vaccine against COVID-19. The nasal vaccine against COVID-19 should help in quicker coverage of the population. So now they're trying to say here is that this nasal vaccine of COVID-19, it might help us in covering a lot of population when it comes to the vaccination drive that's been going for the COVID-19. Okay, so let's start now. The history of pandemic has been punctuated periodically by incremental developments in science and medicine. So now if we talk about the history of pandemic, why they are calling it as the history? Because years have been passed, we definitely can say, when this pandemic hit the world. And it has been punctuated means there has been a lot of changes in the development of science and medicine regarding various precautions and measures that must be taken in order to prevent us from being infected by this virus. Funding, industry, and research were plowed into laboratories with the hope that their petri dishes would yield solutions to save lives and retard the march of the virus. So now what they're trying to say here is that what are the various steps that had been taken? So there were funding from various organizations and development in the industries, research, where research were taken in the laboratories. Why? With the hope that they're petri dishes. Now, what is a petri dish? If you are from a science background or you've studied science, so petri dish is a small, it's like a bowl, okay, where certain experiments are being conducted. It's a glass, you could say it's a shallow glass bowl, okay. Now that would yield solutions to save lives. Now, so various experiments and researches were taking on so that we could come to various solutions in order to save lives and retard the march of the virus. Retarding the march of the virus means the way the rate at which this virus was spreading, it could be lessened. Now here march does not mean the month, but marching means like when soldiers march. That is what they're trying to say here. Okay, so let's start now. While many vaccines have provided that assurance of life, prevented hospitalization, and also reduced the severity of disease, it is only a nasal vaccine that carries within it the promise of preventing further transmission by countering it at the site of the viral entry into the body. Let's break it and understand. While many vaccines have provided that assurance of life, now what they're trying to say here is that if we talk about various vaccines, what was the main motto of the vaccines? That it was providing assurance of life, that our life won't be at stake, prevented hospitalization, like many people won't be there in the hospitals, and also reduce the severity of disease, like the fatality of the disease was supposed to reduce because of these vaccines. It is only a nasal vaccine that carries within it the promise of preventing further transmission. What they're trying to say here is that it is only the nasal vaccine. Now it is the only thing that is carrying within it the promise, means it is promising a lot that it will prevent further transmission by countering it at the site of viral entry into the body. Now this virus was spreading everywhere, like through by inhaling. That's why we were wearing masks, right? So if at that particular spot we are using a vaccine, so definitely it will help in further transmission. That's what they're trying to say here. In that sense, the announcement that a nasal vaccine had been given emergency use authorization for use as primary immunization to the 18 plus age group is welcome. So if we talk about in this manner, like this nasal vaccine has been given emergency use authorization. Okay. The government has said now it can be used when there is an emergency. Now for whom? For primary immunization. Like the main motto is for the immunization of whom? 18 plus group, like people above the age of 80, is a welcome. Like everyone is accepting it. A nasal vaccine, if effective, now if we talk about this nasal vaccine, if it becomes effective, is probably the most advanced tool to handle. Now, this will be the most advanced development in terms of preventing the COVID-19 as of now. And by virtue of being a spirits in the nose or mouth, now this will be through the nasal, like the vaccine will be injected in us through our nasal. That's what they're trying to say here, will be preferable to painful jabs. Obviously, people would prefer this rather than getting injected. Painful jabs means the vaccinations that is being taken here by injecting with the help of a needle, particularly with children or adults with trypanophobia. Now, especially if we talk about small children, because they are scared of getting injections, and even adults with trypanophobia. Trypanophobia is a fear of needles. When people fear, when they start fearing of needles, that is what is known as trypanophobia. That might have come in the way of getting the vaccine. So many people might not have got vaccine till now because they fear from needles. So if those people are getting vaccine in terms of this nasal one, then definitely they will agree and start getting vaccinations as well. So while in theory, the nasal vaccine ensures that the virus is stopped from building with host cells at the very point of entry into the human body, there is very little evidence of that working in a COVID-19 scenario among humans. So now they're trying to say here is that while this is the theory that the nasal vaccine ensures the virus is stopped from binding in the host cell at the very point of entry. Obviously, because we are using this vaccine where? Through our nose, right? And from there only the virus is getting entry. So at the very point we are trying to kill the virus, but there is very little evidence. Till now, there hasn't been much evidence that has shown that COVID-19 will be able to get prevented from this. While an influenza nasal vaccine has reportedly worked. So if we talk about the influenza virus, and when nasal vaccine was used for that, it has worked. And there have been certain reports. 3 other nasal vaccines have been approved for use elsewhere in the world, but very little data is available from that. So it's not just one vaccine that has been made till now, but 3 other vaccines as well has been made. But the evidence that it has been effective is very less, and we don't have enough data to support the facts and agreements that it is of a great quality. Okay. So moving on. In the trials conducted by the Bharat Biotech for the nasal vaccine, developed in association with the University of Washington. Now, this is very important if I talk about from an exams perspective as well, because this nasal vaccine has been a collective effort of two industries. The first one is the Bharat Biotech, which is of India, and with an association with University of Washington. So two have collaborated together to come up with this nasal vaccine. Now, what they said about this was that the reactogenic events and adverse events that were documented during the trial were highly comparable to the published data from other COVID-19 vaccines. So now they're trying to say here is that when this nasal vaccine was under trial, so the data and what the report said, they were very different. They were very highly comparable, means you could see a vast difference between other COVID vaccines and this nasal vaccine. So this is what they said, and this is in one of the reports, hence it is in double quotes. These are the exact words that have been extracted from the document that they might have released then. Okay. The company reportedly conducted a phase 3 trial with about 3,100 unvaccinated people who received 2 doses of the vaccine. Now, this company, Bharat Biotech, it conducted a trial in phase 3 where it included 3,100 unvaccinated people who weren't vaccinated, and they received 2 doses of this nasal vaccine, and a booster trial with about 875 people who received a single dose of the nasal vaccine as a heterogeneous booster. So now what they did was they conducted a trial in the third phase where they divided the group into 2 parts. Okay. If I talk about the first part of the group, it included 3,100 people. The other part included 875 people. Now, these 3,100 people were unvaccinated. They weren't vaccinated till now, whereas these 875 people, they were vaccinated, okay? And these 3,100 people, they received these two doses of this nasal vaccine. However, these 875 people received a single dose, and which was acting as a booster. Now, heterogeneous booster. What is heterogeneous? If you have ever studied, there are 2 types of mixtures, homogeneous and heterogeneous. Homogeneous means something which is of the same quality, and heterogeneous means different. So this is called heterogeneous booster. Why? Because these people might have received a vaccination of another vaccine. If I talk about the Covishield, Covaxin, or Sputnik, or any other XYZ for that matter, and the booster dose was a nasal vaccine, hence written heterogeneous booster. The company has also promised that it would publish the data from the trial soon in the public realm. Now, the company has said, we have conducted this trial, and now we are promising that soon the data will be out to the public as well about the various developments that took place in the phase 3 trial. While the fall in cases has allowed the world to take its foot off the pedal, efforts against the disease will have to be pursued. Now, what they're trying to say here is that, first of all, there's a phrase here, foot off the pedal. When you keep your foot off the pedal means you take less efforts and try to relax. So now, if we have been observing, there has been a fall in the cases around the world. So people are taking their foot off the pedal means people are kind of relaxing. That yes, now the situation is under control and everything is going smoothly, but efforts against the disease will have to be pursued. Like still, we need to take certain efforts in order to stop this virus from spreading, because we never know when again we can have another peak or rise in the level of cases. So moving on. But this drop in numbers does afford a certain pause and pace. Now, this drop, it has afforded a certain pause and pace, means the pace at which the virus is spreading, it has afforded a certain pause. The results of the trials and data must now be allowed to enter the public realm. Now, what need to be done is that whatever trials you've done, so those results should be out in public realm, means you should tell it to the public as well. Even as emergency use authorization is being processed for use of drugs or vaccines in the community. Even though you are saying that this vaccine will be used for emergency, but still it is your right and your duty that you need to tell us. Us here means the public, about the various results that have taken about this nasal vaccine. Okay. The government too must factor this in its agenda. Now here another phrase, factor in is a phrase. Okay, if I remove this here from here, so factor in means include. So the government must include certain things in its agenda. Now what is this? Emphasizing the promotion of transparency means being very transparent to the public. Like if this vaccine is of no use, they should be very transparent, like clear in their way that no, this vaccine is not useful, and tell us the exact way how much effective it is now and in the future. Not only now, but in the future as well, you need to be transparent, even as it ensures continuing a commitment of various departments involved in battling all aspects of the virus. Now, the report of every department should be very transparent in nature, that if certain department says it is good, you should tell us it is good. And if they say it's bad, it is bad. You need to be transparent to the public as well. In addition, delivering the vaccines to the general public and covering those untouched by the primary 2 doses and the boosters should remain high on the agenda. Now, what is the main motive here? You should focus on whom? there are two types of people that you need to focus. The first is the people, those who have been untouched by the primary two doses, means those people who haven't been vaccinated till now. First, you need to prioritize them. And second should be the people, those who haven't got the booster dose yet. So this should remain high on your agenda when it comes to giving vaccinations to the people. Okay. So this was the editorial. I think it was pretty simple today. So moving on to the tone of the editorial. So if I talk about the tone of today's editorial, it's analytical because see, proper analysis have been given about the nasal vaccine that has been approved for emergency use. So they have talked about the way, the collaboration of the organizations that have come up together in order to make this vaccine, and what are the future prospects of it, and soon the reports will be out. And then a bit of history has been told that earlier the virus was spreading at a faster rate. Now things have started coming to a normal life, but we need to take measures. So an entire analysis was given. So analytical will be the tone of today's editorial. So we are done with the editorial now. Yes. So thank you so much for joining and participating with us. Keep joining every day. The editorial comes every day except on Sundays, because Sundays we don't have editorial in the newspapers as well. And yes, if you aren't able to join, so you can just subscribe to our YouTube channel, English Learners. And yes, so that you can get further notification. It's not just the editorial that happens here, but other things as well. Like we do have the debate competitions and various other events are also organized. So do subscribe. And yes, the editorial is always out early in the morning. Like we try to post it before 12. So keep on participating and thank you. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. Thank you so much.